Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you don't really know why you're making the video you're making? Because that's the situation that I'm in right now. There have been some videos that have been going around the last week that have to do with best practices for the new Action Force Wave 1 figures. When you first get them, when you open the box, what you need to do, what you need to look for, all that kind of stuff, which is great. I mean, that's great proactivity on valaverse's part. But apparently my name came up in a Facebook toy group. And as I've said many times on this channel, Facebook toy groups are the slime of humanity. That's why I ditched all my memberships in all of them 2 years ago. I think I would rather, find out that a friend of mine had formed a street gang than formed a Facebook toy group at this point. Anyway, my name was brought up because somebody who, I can't even say this without a sense of irony, somebody by the name of Chad predicted that I would be in a quandary because I had made the video about NECA. Now, he seemed to think that because these Action Force figures are being recommended to be checked thoroughly before you start really posing them, and making sure you have like a hair dryer for certain tight joints and things like that, that would run counter to what I had said in my video late last year about NECA. I find the cognitive dissonance and the false equivalency tiring at this point, and I need to point some things out here before we get started with what I'm going to say based on my experience with this. And I've left one more figure to show you what I mean. He's in the box, and we'll open it up, and I'll show you how it works. But I never said anywhere in the NECA video that I've never had to heat up a joint on a modern figure before. I never said that anywhere. The video wasn't about that. Now, this individual then proceeded to accuse me of and I'm quoting now, semantic conspiracy in reference to the fact that NECA is a wholesaler of non-durable goods. That's a fact, which is now a conspiracy. So I guess if this person finds the fact inconvenient, it becomes a conspiracy. Now, you all might remember the last time I was accused of conspiratorial motives, a hoax even, the person in question was outed as a con man, and much to the embarrassment of everybody who had defended him, tucked tail and ran. And then I ended up in Australia. The point I'm trying to make is that it's like the last resort if you're going to, especially when I'm not even in the fight, to accuse me of a conspiracy out of nowhere or trying to drum up a conspiracy and to have disingenuous motives. But to get back to the point about NECA and why this is not an equivalent. Remember how I said that a lot of these super fans of toy lines aren't good with the details? They're really bad at details and remembering details. Chad said that my semantic conspiracy about NECA, which would soon get me in hot water in my review of Action Force, was because I had mishandled a NECA Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figure and broken it. And therefore, in order to save face, I had created a semantic conspiracy regarding the non-durable goods designation for NECA. First of all, bad about details, was a Predator figure from their arcade line, was not a Ninja Turtle at all. And the mishandling claim is also, manipulation of everything, because in the video I talked about how I hit this thing with a heat gun everywhere I could before I started moving anything because I knew it was NECA. The point is that it broke anyway. That's the problem with NECA. 20-year-old company. The plastic still feels like glued together sawdust. And even when you do your due diligence, That's no guarantee, and it can still break. Unacceptable, and hardly an equivalent to what we're looking at here, as you'll see in a moment. I don't understand why some people are so slavishly devoted to a set of products to the extent. I don't have a problem with people being a fan of products, but I don't like it when fans of products are so zealous about them that they feel like they have to lie, manipulate, cast aspersions on people that don't like those products, spin what they say, lie about what they say. The fact of the matter is, whether they want to admit it or not, NECA has made no room or effort to improve the situation with their products. In fact, they have thrown up their hands and said out on their Twitter feed and everywhere else, just make sure that everything you buy from us, you put in a bath of hot water. Now, that doesn't guarantee anything. We still have seen photos of NECA products broken in the box before they've ever been opened in shipment. As this is testament to, you can have a really nice heat gun and do everything you need to do, and it'll still break. And I think you guys know me by now with the number of toys that I've repaired and restored and modern figures that I've opened. I've run into tight joints every now and then on some modern toy lines. There was a short round from the 2008 Indiana Jones. There was a Doctor Who figure of Mickey from the Christopher Eccleston season with a janky wrist that I needed to heat up. It's happened on some Marvel Legends and some Black Series, but it's not something where you have to dunk the whole figure in water, nor do those companies say, as a matter of standard operating procedure, you need to give every product you buy from us a deep hot bath. That shows no effort on their part to solve the problem. That was what I was saying in the NECA video. That is what Chad doesn't understand. And anybody else out there right now who thinks that this is going to run afoul of what I've said about NECA as a company, you're just being disingenuous to yourself, let alone the rest of the toy collecting community, and especially me. I didn't say that about Super 7. I don't say that about Hasbro or Mattel. Because modern figures have a lot of articulation points, simply because adults keep demanding to be more and more present in toy product offerings rather than letting kids have toys, you're going to get more and more possibilities of joints seizing up in shipment due to temperature differentials and everything like that. Where NECA goes wrong is in two places. One, their plastic is garbage, and two, they spray over all the plastic with paint apps. So then that paint can get into those joints as well. So now you've got paint frozen in the joints of already subpar plastic. And NECA's made what effort to correct it? Nothing. Meanwhile, if you look at toy history, the original 12 Kenner Star Wars action figures had a completely different head attachment than later figures because they realized the original 12 figures were prone to their head snapping off or breaking off. And so they flipped the architecture of it for future figures in all the future assortments. Similarly, the first 13 straight arm G.I. Joe figures, their thumbs broke off all the time. Now, I know as kids we still had a thumb breakage issue with the 1983 and forward, but it was a lot less frequent than it was with the 1982 figures. And I know that because I still have all of my G.I. Joes. And all the ones from 1982, all my straight arms, have either a thumb or a whole set of fingers missing. My point in saying this to you guys is that Kenner and Hasbro, at that time in the 80s, and for Kenner it was the late 70s, they immediately made efforts to improve their product offerings. They immediately made efforts to correct the issue. Bobby Valla of Valaverse has meticulously designed these action figures, and he's put them through round after round after round of testing. And when he found out that certain joints in the process, he thought they might be a little weak, he beefed them up in the design process. Now, these figures have shown up, and they are pretty stellar. And you'll hear more about that in a video that I'm going to do dedicated to a review of this. But as part of that, because they have so many points of articulation and because they've come from across the ocean, there's going to be hot days and cold nights on those containers, and things happen just like they do with Marvel Legends and Black Series, but it's nowhere different in frequency from Marvel Legends and Hasbro Star Wars Black Series. There's no difference in frequency to it. It's the same. And the interesting part that I find key, especially as it relates to NECA, is that Bobby has already talked to the factory to how to adjust for those variances for Wave 2. So not only are the figures no different in their durability, quality of their materials, they're superior actually in most every way, but for the sake of this video, just so you know, they are equal to, they stand toe-to-toe in durability, materials quality with any big toy company 6-inch product right now. When I say big toy company, I do not mean NECA. NECA is the outlier. But even with that, even at 99.9% quality aspirations, you know, at 99.9% everything was working out, Bobby still said, I'm not settling for that. Whereas NECA is nowhere close to 99.9%, and they threw up their hands a long time ago. So, Chad, you're a douchebag. And you're allowed to like terrible products, but that doesn't mean you get to take your denial and foist it onto the internet without a response. And what people are saying is that you want to be cognizant of the purchase that you just made with a Action Force figure like you would a Marvel Legends or a Star Wars Black Series. Now, as I've shown you in my recent Indiana Jones video about how to build the Ultimate Indy, when you're switching out heads and hands and things like that, even on figures where they're designed to do that, you always want to make sure that you use heat or hot water or something when you're popping limbs off just to protect those pegs and posts and joints. That's just common sense. You don't want to do that any other way, because the last thing you want to do is have that ball joint permanently stretch or deform any of those cavity points so that they don't fit on with the same snugness as they did originally. That's just good common sense. And like I said, I've repaired and restored more toys than Chad has probably seen in his life. So when I was seeing, people's chatter online and the videos were starting to come out, I thought, okay, well, this doesn't really look any more or less frequent an issue than Marvel Legends or, Feudal Ninjas or Doctor Who from Character Options or anything else I've run into. And guess what? It wasn't. And it isn't. So I have a Steel Brigade figure here from the new Action Force line. For those of you who don't do a lot of this kind of collecting and modern figure stuff, when I'm talking about frequency of a tight joint, it doesn't stay tight. It's just kind of locked up a little bit because of raising and lowering temperatures in transit. It just happens sometimes. And even with it happening sometimes and being a norm in good quality figures, not in garbage like this, but in good quality figures, Bobby's trying to improve the situation even better for next time. He doesn't want to settle for 99.9%. He's already told me directly that he wants it to be, as close to 100% as he can get. And I just want to point out something right before we get to this figure. Bobby not only had a protective clamshell designed, but in order to make sure that that clamshell didn't rub up against the figure's paint apps, he put an extra layer of plastic over every bubble that sits between the figure and the cover. That's not somebody that in any way can be fairly compared to this. I absolutely hate disingenuous, subjectivity. I can't stand it. All right, so here's our figure. The figure from Action Force has a new innovation. When I say new innovation, I mean it's not utilized very often, but Bobby is utilizing it because it should be used. It's not utilized probably by big companies for a cost-saving measure, or they just didn't want to bother with it. But it's the hip drop articulation that allows a superhero or soldier 6-inch figure to kneel more realistically, to get that that knee up higher and things like that when it's in a crouching position or other type of superhero position. Like, I'm sure it'd be very useful for a Spider-Man or something like that. But as part of that, modern articulation is really dependent on the whole ball joint method. And a lot of these joints in here are on ball joints. And like I said, they're all working fine. There's no problem with these figures. You want to test your joints first, just so that you're not being a dunderhead about it. You just want to test them. I don't know how to say it any plainer. But as part of that, it just so happens that the right hip joint, right as if you are the figure, so if you're facing the figure, it's left, but it's the right hip joint. The right hip ball joint can sometimes be a little tight in shipment. It's like I said, it's a cavity variance, but it's not a permanent issue, just a cavity variance. And what you do is, like, even now, I mean, I didn't encounter that very much on these, but you want to test it real quick and just be a little ginger with any figure you pull out, and just test that ball joint to make sure that it's forward and down motion of the leg. In other words, turning the leg 90 degrees up like a Remco Karate Kid figure and then back down isn't too tight. If it resists, there might be a little bit of that, in transit stubbornness going on with this one joint. You want to test every joint just to make sure, because again, Marvel Legends and other figures every now and then exhibit one joint having a random, snugness to it. Not like this garbage right here. Again, did not respond to the heat treatment recommended by NECA. Broke anyway. Some of them break in the box. All right, so here you go. So this is actually moving, but let's just, for the sake of demo, I'll just show you what I mean. You can use a hairdryer. I have a heat gun. You always set it on low. The only difference between a hairdryer and a heat gun is that you're going to take less time with a heat gun than you will with a hairdryer. And when I say time, I'm talking like 10 seconds versus 20, 25 seconds. All right. So you want to hit that. You want to hit that joint. You want to keep your heat gun about 6 inches away, something like that. And just turn it a little bit as you're counting, 10, 15, whatever. It's not an exact science. You're just trying to make sure that that plastic kind of wakes up in that one troublesome joint. And now that it's heated up, oh, look at that. He's kicking just fine. And the best part is that, like Marvel Legends and Black Series and other decently engineered figures, this is a one-time fix. You're never going to have to revisit this problem unless, of course, you put these guys in the freezer or something like that. But it's just waking up that joint. That's it. These, and it's usually on that one side. But test all your joints just to make sure. Test them all. Because, like I said, randomness with, modern figures that have all these different, pivot points, it's just good practice. It's how you don't mishandle things. It's how you always treat, modern figures that you're working with for the first time right out of the box. You test every joint gingerly. If you find one that's a little bit of trouble, you break out your hair dryer, or in my case, your heat gun, and you move forward with it. That was the only joint. It was already moving, but it just needed a little bit of encouragement, and it is totally fine now. And now this whole figure is good to go. That's all it takes. That only took me, 10 seconds? I will be doing a review of these figures real soon. I will say up front right now that they are really impressive. I mean, these are really impressive action figures. I don't want to say too much more than that right now because I really want to dig into it here in the next week or two. But very, very, very impressive stuff. And I can't wait to talk with you about them more. So I guess I'll leave it at that. If you've been hearing about, joint problems and stuff with the Action Force figures from Valaverse, they have been greatly, greatly exaggerated. It is hardly a NECA level issue. There's nothing like NECA. And I say that with a lot of sarcasm. Now, before I end this video, I know some of you have probably already written comments or are about to leave comments asking, why do you have to address this guy Chad's comments? Why don't you just not feed the trolls? Why don't you just let these kind of criticisms go by? If you truly believed that philosophy of non-engagement and not feeding the trolls and disregarding criticism and critical comments, you wouldn't be leaving that comment you're about to be leaving. I give as good as I get. And that's just who I am as a personality. If you don't like that, or if you forget that for a moment, consider it before you jump in there and just start criticizing or accusing or throwing around all kinds of things, because I'm not going to roll over and take it lying down. My whole personality with this channel has never been one about pandering for clicks or views. I find that when I respond in kind, people tend to come back saying, hey man, don't get defensive. But then they defend what they're trying to say to me at the same time. And then they love to say things like, hey, it's nothing personal. If it's not personal, it means you don't know me, and I definitely don't know you. And if I don't know you, and you're trying to tell me how to run my channel, or how to respond to other criticisms, there's only going to be one response.
You know, I know you.
No. I've just got one of those faces.